Hello, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors. It is Professor Hamamoto on Easter Sunday, March 31st, year 2024. It is 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And today, I will answer the question that I pose in today's post. Who really discovered, quote unquote, discovered Bohemian Grove? All right, welcome everybody here that's populating the chat room. Let me know if there are any audio problems. I'll be checking periodically because of systemic problems I've experienced in the past. But unless I'm notified, hi, Sean M. Unless I'm notified, I'll proceed. Um, as you might have been aware, I've been absent for 1 week so far as live casts are concerned. And I'll just say that TubeView suspended me. They gave me a strike, as they call it, which forbade me from casting last Sunday. But I did a pre-recorded piece that I hope you'll watch there. And of course, there's over 2 years of playlists that are available to you to watch. And I'm telling you because for those of you who have been longtime subscribers here, thank you very much for your loyalty. But I'm getting a huge upsurge in subscriptions, which has me worried. Why all of a sudden I'm so popular on TubeView? What do they have planned for me? What do they have in store? But until I figure it out, I welcome everybody. But I'm just telling you, this is just one show of I don't know how many I've done, and they are, if I may say so, uniformly excellent because I do my homework. I do a lot of prep work. There's a reason why I restrict my presentations, my talks, and they're limited to 60 minutes. There's a reason why I limit it to only one a week because I use the other 6 days of the week and the seventh because I've been preparing all the way up to today, up till airtime. Um, I need to prep. I need to study, and apparently, to some people, and this is a problem I'll address throughout this talk here because I am feeling a bit peevish about the nature, the type of people who are beginning to subscribe to the show. And it's a law of averages. The higher numbers on TubeView um, that you manage to acquire over, in my case, almost 3 years. Well, yeah, I'm in my third year, 2 years and about 3 months. The law of averages states that you get kvetchers, complainers, but the two major categories are the whiners and the biters. So I might, if I may be indulged, address these themes as I go about talking about the main topic, which is who really discovered Bohemian Grove. Because the specific question and the larger psychology of TubeView and so-called social media are very much related, right? And there should be a book, an anthropological study or sociological study of, and there are some papers about it, but I think a comprehensive paradigm breaking book. And I'm not going to be the one that's writing it, by the way. I don't have the time or the energy or the resources or the support or the institutional support to do that. But the whole system needs to be rethought. And I view myself as sort of an experiment in sort of post higher education communication to an educated audience, and it's huge, it's big, but they're for the most part written off by academia. They focus because they're going to get more immediate results. They're focusing on young minds, people who are as yet unformed intellectually and emotionally too. Right, you're vulnerable. You're away from home. You're excited about learning about new people and places and things, and you're quite receptive. You're 18 years old, and that's where they like to keep you in that state of arrested development. And unfortunately, people take that model and they try to bring it onto my site. I'll just tell you right off, there's little or nothing that any of you creeps will ever be able to teach me. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, and you'll find out why by the end of this talk. Why I present this question: Who really discovered Bohemian Grove? And it's not okay. This is part of the problem. People think, "Oh yeah, I know the answer. I got it down. Yeah, I know all about the New World Order. I've heard about the Federal Reserve. Yeah, I know about cultural Marxism, quote unquote. I know all the buzzwords." I've been into it ever since Whitney Webb came on the scene. Um, in another correspondence, I used the initials WW, and someone was offended. They thought I was meaning Whitney Webb, and I meant to. I was referring to Wonder Woman. And she says, "Well, I don't watch Wonder Woman, so I wouldn't know." So I got to watch myself. I got to spell it out for you, and that's what I intend to do today. Thank you very much to my loyal audience, and welcome again. I don't mean to start out sounding so hostile, but I welcome the new people who are into it. And I realize that everybody is a newbie at some point in the learning curve. I understand that. I respect it. And I'm appreciative that you're taking the time, the energy, and spending the resources to be with me today and sharing some of these observations that I've had to learn the hard way. So, who really discovered it? It's not the Indigo. It's not Russell Brand. Okay. And if you want to hear someone rat-a-tat-tat machine gun talk, heavily edited, so it's just a continuous spewing of nonsensical, non-connecting information, then please don't watch me. Go directly to Russell Brand, right? He's not even an American. I'm a third generation American, and somehow I'm not qualified yet to comment on my own country, my people's country. But Russell Brand, yes, he can. But just think about what he's trying to do. Is he part of a larger demoralizing effort by focusing strictly on the United States of America? As if he lived here, as if he is part of the warp and woof of American culture, society, and politics, as if he has a dog in this fight? He doesn't. Besides, I'd rather want to know about his home empire, which really runs the show. And within that, the little 1 square mile part of Earth called the city of London. Yes, indeed. I'd rather know about that rather than the pathology, all the libtards and the idiotic Biden followers that Russell Brand likes to mock. Right? I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of the conservative, the ones who've been around for a long time, the OGs. I'll give them a pass because at least their heart was in the right place. Russell Brand is a retread. He's a retool. He's a repurposed stand-up comedian like most of them. And they're not necessarily, most of them are stand-up comedians because they know how to fill up dead air, right? They know how to keep it laughing. I didn't mean to start off again so hostile, but I'm just trying to understand the reason for my sudden popularity. I think people are tired of these sort of rat-tat-tat bullshit by Stu Peters and all these other Louder with Crowder. I mean, that tells you all there. But is the person who speaks the loudest and the fastest, is he the person that Americans listen to? Maybe that is what our aesthetic is. Because if you travel around the world, there's always some loudmouth person in the corner or a couple dining at a restaurant. It could be Da Nang, it could be in Paris, and this is always an American because the Americans are at the center of the universe and they talk loud and they're really self-absorbed. They don't give a shit about the rest of the world, really. So, I mean, I'd like to hear from foreigners, which includes Canadians, by the way, like Amazing Polly. Well, I would like to hear what they really think about Americans. It's not a very flattering image, I can guarantee you that. 'Cause I've been on trams and taxis and ride shares coming back on international trips, and they think I'm Japanese. I am by heritage, ethnicity, Okinawan Japanese, but they think I can't speak English. right? Just like a lot of you probably don't think I can speak English. I'm not entitled to talk about my country, whereas Russell Brand has license to do so. Um, and so they're talking about, they just coming back from a business trip from New York or wherever, and they're talking smack about my country. And then they look at me and they go, "Oh my God, he might speak English." And they said, "Oh, we're sorry, we're upon." And I said, "Oh, that's okay. I agree about everything you said." And believe me, it's the most filthy, disparaging, insulting type of, and these are proper British people, okay? They're not going to talk smack in front of your face like Americans do. All right. So here
has referred to the military activity in Gaza as genocide. The Daily Wire have severed their ties with Candace Owens over the issue of Israel's policies in that region. Instagram are now censoring political content without telling anyone why, and TikTok appears to be on the verge of being banned. Some say precisely because it allows war to be reported on in ways that would otherwise be censored by other platforms.
I can't stand it. It's magic, ladies and gentlemen, the fast spewing. This is like when you're at the county fair and there's a guy trying to sell a Vegematic. It's a nonstop spielen. I mean, if you can't recognize that as just a basic behavioral control, then you got a hole in your soul. Control, hole in your soul. Write that in your rhyme book, P. Diddley. Right? And I'm tired of you studio gangsters too, who think you own the popular culture. Right. I've been watching women's basketball because I wanted to see the Caitlin Clark phenomenon in action. She's good. I don't think she compares to Pete Maravich. Pete Maravich played the men's game, not the women's game. All right. But that aside, I was astounded. I said, wow, the Iowa team, the University of Iowa team, they're all white. They all be white, you know? And I said, man, there should be some affirmative action here going on, you know? The Hawkeyes need some diversity. They need some DEI. So what I think they should go to the engineering department and find like a 5'1" Asian girl and put her in the starting lineup. You weren't ready for that one, were you? See, you know, Russell Brand can't hold a candle to me. Anyway, okay, enough of I had to get my, my aggression out beforehand before I turn to the serious uh, topic today. So it's not these characters. He's a newbie. He made fun of conservatives because when it was cool on the circuit to do that. Now you have all these retooled comedians who are all of a sudden conservatives, or they're not even comedians. They're like Candace Owens types, right? And you'll find out by the end of the cast, I am blacker than Candace Owens. I actually grew up in the ghetto. She didn't. She's part of the black bourgeoisie. And one of my patrons told me she's married to some nobility, an Englishman. She's probably she's closer to Russell Brand than she is to me. I'll tell you that. But she's also one of them retreads, one of them retools. All right. But these are the people who are getting all the action, except for me. How did I sneak through? Well, maybe people are beginning to smell through the shuck, the shuck and jive, right? And if you're not, I'm going to tell you, because most of you are not used to listen to a yellow man speak at length about anything, unless it's about the mysteries of the cosmos, courtesy of Professor Michio Kaku, who I admire, by the way. But he's either got to be a chef like Martin Yan, or he's got to be a physicist, right? I respect both. By the way, Martin Yan went to UC Davis, and he speaks perfect English, as I've mentioned before in my brilliant talk on Anthony Bourdain as a creation of intelligence and perhaps even an intelligence asset. That really pissed people off, right? And I didn't even accuse him of cultural appropriation. I didn't say, hey, Anthony, why are you going in there and eating sushi? That's my people's food. What you doing? You're over in Thailand eating the other. You know, you wrote these these graphic novels about Jiro the sushi man. That's not your cuisine. That's mine. I didn't claim that. Right. Check out that on the playlist because I'm telling you, I've been shadow banned. That's why I'm getting the hits now because they're trying to build me up so they can take me down. So stick with me and understand the source of my, I won't call it venom. I'm more subtle than that. You dig? Yeah, Anthony Bourdain, Julie's Child, Martin Yan. Julia Child was OSS. Bourdain, I think, trained at the CIA, Culinary Institute of America. His mama was big in New York City publishing. I always wondered, gee, I'm a really good writer. How come I can't get no contract? How come, I got no hookup? I don't know no women. So they used to call them the white shoe boys in the publishing, but they're now the white shoe girls who control it. I mean, the white shoe girls are the one that does all this juvenile literature about GLBTQ and, titles like My Gay Dads and all that. So, yeah, of course, a straight yellow man is not going to get any play in today's DEI culture. And I don't need it, right? I'm on YouTube, or as I call it, too. So anyway, I guess I'll devote it at other time because I'm taking up too much time here about FAQs for newbies, right? And haters and whiners. I'll do that at some other time. But I'll just simply state one simple fact because I got stories up the wazoo. One of the main complaints I got recently with all the new people who subscribe and said, "You talk too damn much about yourself. You just go on and you're just an ego tripping, and you're bragging about being on the Alex Jones show," which I was, by the way, way before these synthetic professors like the Weinstein brothers, right? I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name deliberately. All right. Or Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, who's also a UC Davis product, by the way. Or the most prominent of all, Jordan Peterson. They're synthetic. I was there years before, so hate me for that. And you haven't seen me since, have you? But I'm not going away. I'm not going nowhere. So for all the haters wondering why I talk about myself so much, because I've lived these stories. I'm telling you, I have direct personal, in many cases, personal relationships with the people I'm presenting. Either that or I'm one step removed or 2 or 3 degrees of separation for people like this. This is my legacy. This is my history. I'm not a retread stand-up comedian who has read some book, some compilation about Bohemian Grove or about how everything in the country is a conspiracy, or Paul is dead, or George Harrison really didn't die, or everybody's a phony, right? That is, and these are supposedly indie people. Shows you that the other side is winning when this radical denial of reality has become the norm. And I do not want you to fall in that trip or that trap, that trip trap, right? Because you know what? I want you to be a winner, not a loser, because we are marching towards victory as a species, as human beings. America will be resurrected, no doubt about it. It's already done. It's all over but the crying. Today is the day of the resurrection. But I'm talking about not just the holy resurrection. I'm talking about societal, cultural, and yes, even economic resurrection. All right. I'll drink to that. This is only water, by the way. Structured water. My throat's already raw. So let me move into it. I hope this has piqued your curiosity to check my earlier shows on Anthony Bourdain, Robin Williams, who I think he was a proof of concept of neurohacking, right? You just thought he was a comedian genius. He was. But in addition to that, there are means of controlling him through what we know about nanotechnology. We know about that now, don't we? Well, we didn't know that when he was on Mork and Mindy way back in the day. Excuse me, I need another sip. And it's Professor Hamamoto. Look at, I'm ego tripping. I'm talking about me in the third person, the royal we. It was yours truly. It was me that showed that Joan Rivers was married into the Warburg family. She's a Warburg. You know who James Warburg was? He's one of the co-founders of the Federal Reserve, the private federal. They call it the U.S. Federal. It's the private banking cabal that runs this country. She's part of that bloodline through her husband, Edgar Warburg Rosenberg. You got it? And everybody's folks in the back, oh, yeah, Michelle Obama's a tranny. And they keep showing that clip over again, right? Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Does it really matter? I think it's more interesting that Joan Rivers comes out of that line, that bloodline. See, they only give you half of the story, indie media. It's amusing, part of the story. They'll show clips of Michelle, as we like to call them, she's dangling around. She's not wearing a jock strap, and she's dancing with Elaine DeGenerate, and like, man, tie that mother down. I shouldn't be disrespectful. I'm starting to talk like Kingfish on Amos and Andy, but I shouldn't be disrespecting Michelle Obama. And if I talk like Amos and Andy, as longtime viewers know, it's because I am a ghetto child. All right. I'm old enough. I grew up under segregation. So that's my sociolect. There's an English linguistics specialist, Basil Davidson, who came up with this concept of sociolects, right? People speak according to certain social classes, certain social networks, certain club. The British accent of the nobility is said to be plummy. And you've got the regional accents in the U.S. and, the whole bit. There's all kinds of YouTubes on that. Those are called sociolects. But so my primary sociolect is that of the ghetto. All right. So this is not an affectation. This is how many yellow people of my generation grew up. You dig? That's why I'm making the claim that I'm blacker than Candace Owens. I'm blacker than Cory Booker. I'm blacker than Kamala Harris. I'm blacker than the long-legged Mac Daddy, Barack Hussein Obama. If I could use the trope by the respectful Reverend Pastor David Manning. All right. Because I live there. And also Latino. So I can also, move into that sociolect as well, which my mother used to, because she wanted me to assimilate properly. So she wanted me to speak proper English. So she said, stop talking like a Mexican. I said, but Mama, I play with those. I'm just talking like my playmates. And she said, don't talk like that. But these are sociolects, right? And people of other ethnicities can mock and mimic yellow people, but there's no reciprocity there, right? So I go out of my way to flip the script on you in my delivery, all right? And speaking of flipping the script, there's a sociologist by the name of G. William Domhoff, who instead of studying the underclass, the working poor, certain ethnic groups like Asians, poverty, or Blacks, or Mexicans, Five Families, Oscar Lewis, a classic anthropological study. They're all foundation funded, by the way, and they're all supposedly liberal, benevolent looks into people who are disadvantaged in our society so that we, as a beneficent society, can lift them up. I'm being ironic in case you haven't noticed, in case you don't know my style. I often talk in the ironic mode. They're not there to do that. They're there to figure out how your world works so they can keep you down, right? And if conservatism is going big right now, well, yeah, well, let's get Candace Owens. Yeah, I know she's having some problems now. She lost a contract with the Daily Wire. You know, her pop-up pundit boss, Ben Shapiro, fired her because she said something, quote unquote, anti-Semitic. Oh my God, there's a lot of drama in indie media right now. There's a wonderful Polly, and there's some tapes that have been released on Louder with Crowder. It's all happening, man. And you got Ass Clown here, Russell Brand, talking about how independent media is beginning to fall apart. They're doing all this infighting. Well, I'm not going to be part of it. So the new people who are subscribing and are trying to drag me into this stuff, forget about it. I'm not even going to I'm not going to answer any comments on YouTube anymore. I'll let them flow. I'll put them out there, right? But I'm not going to answer. It takes too much time. I'm busy working. I do this professionally. I've done it professionally for decades. I'm not a newbie. I'm not a former bounty hunter like Stu Peters, the auctioneer. If you want something condensed and unrambling, go see and he's American. Go see Stu Peters. I affectionately call him the auctioneer. Right? He's like Dog the bounty hunter. So anyway, I'm just trying to save a lot of people for some reason they're so upset, by my persona, but it's not a persona. It's who I really am. I know it's difficult for you to understand that, but that's who I am. Yeah, Joan Rivers is a Warburg, and I think it was not the tranny comment that killed her, is the fact that she was breaking ranks with the bloodline. Right? These are the people that control. They're the puppet masters. They're the people behind P. Diddley. You dig? They're the people behind Lear Cohen, even. They're the people behind Russell Simmons. They're the people behind the WNBA. They're the people behind Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan. All right. These are the super bankers. And there have been books on it. So anyway, let me talk about more specifically a person who I've never met, but I know him through the second or third degree separation principle, but who I encountered as early as my undergraduate years. And that's a long time ago. And his insights really stuck with me. The book was called Who Rules? Question mark. That's why I put my title today in the form of a question. Who really discovered Bohemian Grove? And so guess what? G. William Domhoff, who wrote this book, it's about the American ruling class, right? The usual suspects, and that's part of the weakness of the book. A lot of the people who were mentioned in the organization corporate are, by now in 2024, are commonly known, right? They're well known. In fact, some of you people, especially the newbies, who think you can teach me something, which you can't, right? Even you know about this stuff, right? Don't think you discovered the moon and you got to tell them, hey, guess what? No, we know that. Domhoff knew about it, right? And I give all respect to Alex Jones for sneaking into Bohemian Grove, but it wasn't him who discovered it. That's why I put it in question marks. And it wasn't him who studied it. It helped make his career. More power to him. And since that time, there have been, just look on TubeView. Since that time, there have been any number of imitators who go in there saying, oh, I'm sneaking into to Bohemian Grove. I'm going to release all the secrets of the ruling class. Well, you know what? They're not there anymore. Are you kidding me? They're probably not in Davos anymore. They're probably in some catacomb down in Antarctica, you know? And if I may talk about myself, and I know people who are, like, really, unfamiliar with the idea that there are people who actually do stuff in this world instead of playing video games. People like myself who've lived life. I was in Vietnam doing work in Da Nang, and I was on an interview, and it's a big time zone, on the Alex Jones show. And I was, we were just goofing around. I was talking, and I mentioned Neue Schwabenland, which is what the Germans called, Antarctica. And I said, hey, yeah, John Kerry, yeah, he just went down there. It was true. I don't know, he was Secretary of State or doing something. He's one of those globalists. He's one of these power elite members, right? You know the story better, right? Heinz Kerry, right? Forbes Kerry, right? All those bloodlines. It's common knowledge now. And part of my talk today is a plea for us to advance the story. Let's move ahead, right? And let's stop moralizing, and let's stop rehashing stories that, about 9/11 was an inside job and Jeffrey Epstein didn't die, and blah, 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 woof, woof. All right. I don't see anybody in these situations in jail except for Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the only one. Everybody else has skated. And why do you think that is? Well, I think G. William Domhoff, professor at UC Santa Cruz, by the way. Technically, he's a colleague of mine, although I've never met him. That's an interesting campus. I've given a talk on the Santa Cruz. Once time it was a serial killer capital of the country at one point. And I'm trying not to digress because people get very upset when I start freestyling. It's okay if you watch some guy on the street freestyling and all that, but for a yellow like me, no, I got to stay on track, and I got to be Russell Brand. I got to be Stu Peters for you. Right, but I'm not a monkey on the string for you. Professor Domhoff, I was impressed as I finish up that thought with that book, and it stuck with me. And but at that time, we were talking about my college years were 71 to 75, so he would have been a fairly young professor at UC Santa Cruz at the time, right? Because he's still around, by the way. He's retired, but he's still very much active. I think he might be in his 90s, and I probably should pay a professional visit to him, extend my courtesy, and thank him in person for his incredible intellectual contributions. And I'm not being ironic there. I sincerely mean it. And I don't talk enough about the people who have influenced me. I always talk about the biters and the haters who really don't warrant my time. They don't deserve to carry my jockstrap, let alone me making fun of them, right? But in the case of, one of the reasons for giving this talk is to present an homage to G. William Domhoff, who made it his life's work to talk about the sociology of the ruling class. How interesting. The ruling class has always looked at us. They've studied everybody. Human beings. That's why the discipline of anthropology was devised as a colonial tool to understand the native people, to figure out their folk ways, their life ways, their cultural practices, so they can figure out how to enslave them permanently. Right? They try to solve that by, we're going to bring in some indigenous people to do it, so you'll feel included. Of course, they are turncoats, really. They're different. We have them in the yellow people. We have yellow people spying on yellow people, ratting them out. I was surrounded with them at my former place of employment, the University of California, Davis. My department was just full of yellow rats, and a few brown ones because the South Asians don't want to be called yellow, right? Or Filipinos, they want to be called brown. So you have it your way, pick your color, right? So this is a universal phenomenon. So here's the book. I got it recently. And another reason for this talk is because I wanted to thank all my patron supporters for allowing me the resources to purchase this book. Here's the receipt. I got this book That was last week. And the total, including the shipping is free, but the tax is $7.94. There should be no taxes on books. There should be no taxes on CDs. There should be no taxes on music. There should be no taxes on cultural productions and intellectual productions, right? That's not so far-fetched. Why do you think books have a book rate in the postal service? It's because at once upon a time the government felt that we needed an enlightened public, and they're going to try to make it as cheap as possible for people to get their books and magazines. And this is before the days of the internet, right? So there should be no taxes on that. But anyway, the total comes to $104 and some cents for this book. It's the first edition, 1974. And most of them have disappeared off the shelves, right? So I have a collector's item here, but more than that, and I'm going to donate it to an archivist because I'm not going to be around forever to enjoy this. Well, here's a picture of a young Professor Domhoff in the trees of Santa Cruz. If you've been on the campus in that whole area, it's very beautiful. Anyway, I got the copy not of this, not for its collectability, but because I wanted to share some of the contents of it with you. And moreover, I also wanted to highlight the fact that Professor Domhoff has a heritage of picking apart what we now call the New World Order. See, most of you who think you discovered the moon and you're the nitpickers and you claim that I don't have any documentation for my statements and I can't substantiate any observations I've made about Anthony Bourdain or whoever else. I've given dozens, scores of talks by now. You don't know me. You don't know my background. You don't know my training. And it's meticulous, right? We see all this stuff on YouTube about how Justin Lin goes to the gym, works out 2-3 times a day, and he goes to the physical therapist, and he's just, it's all hoops, 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 hoops. It could be Caitlin Clark, whoever it is, and that's just sports, right? I mean, any person who's doing anything at a high level of performance is living at 24 hours a day. And that holds true for me. You understand? So I am insulted when some poo butt he says, "Oh, you got to prove this." Like, who the hell are you? Who are you? If you're not a bot, anyway. So like I told you, I still have a lot of anger issues. Not really. They're nuisance issues. They're pest issues. All right. Just to kind of give you I know the resolution. One day I'll have a document cam or a scanner, and I'll be able to show it to you and leave. But here's some of the hand-drawn artwork of the maps. And again, forgive me for talking about myself, but I knew someone, a performer, and I won't give his name. And he's not a Bohemian Grover. He's not a member, but he was invited to perform. He's a professional mime. And by the way, these people respect talent. They would even respect me because they respect people who are highly disciplined and accomplished, whatever walk of life you're in. Could be the arts, the letters, sports, and definitely business and politics. We know that. So ironically, I would be the type of person that would ordinarily get an invitation, but I'm too well known for that to happen. And I certainly wouldn't be a member, right? How do I know this? Well, this is a time for another talk because I was groomed for this type of world, by the way. I was groomed for this. Oh, since I'm on the talk of grooming, which has taken on a nefarious sexual connotation recently, as in sexual grooming. The reason why I wanted to talk about this topic and Professor Domhoff in specific is because a professional boxer by the name of Ryan Garcia was recently making the rounds on the show, not making the rounds, but on certain prominent shows, talking about he, as a child, was sexually molested. And I'm not going to question his motives or the veracity of his account, but I am putting out the caveat that sometimes people misremember events. Sometimes there's implanted memories. And I know this because I've done biography and I've interviewed people who were talking about events. And I said, wow, that sounds very familiar phrase. And I realized it's because they're echoing something they read from some other book. But I'm not saying that, and this is all over the place, right? The whole field, the Russell Brands and the Stu Peters of the world, all of these people, they've glutted the market with this form of entertainment. Bohemian Grove is being one of their pet entertainment projects, right? It's not just Disney who does this. It's our quote unquote our people who obsess over these topics. I'm not saying they're invalid. I'm not saying they're not real, but I'm saying we need to look at the totality of this. So anyway, his recent appearance, Ryan Garcia, and again, I'm not going to commit to saying whether he's true, false, or what. I'm just presenting it. Do you understand? I am just presenting it. And then, of course, predictably, because I had to do my prep work, there was all kinds of stuff by the Pop-Up Pundits. They're all young men, by the way, underemployed actors and wannabe stand-up comedians with rich parents who could buy them subscriptions on YouTube. That's my competition. And they're all talking about the Ryan Garcia problem. So in case you're not up on that, let me just show you a brief clip of what I'm referring to.
Coming up, we got so many big guests here today.
It'll
So
come
many
on
interesting
soon. It's a
people.
volume issue.
I'm told we've got one of the top boxers on the line as well. So you just control who we go to next. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, why don't we
Go to
start
first?
Why don't we start right out of the gate with Ryan Garcia? Ryan, go ahead and unmute yourself and say what you have to say if you're still there.
No, I'm just here. I've been following Alex's stuff for a while. Always been intrigued by what he's saying. So, I obviously do my own spaces, so I'm not here to, try to really input too much. I'm here to listen. But I do understand that April 8th is a monumental day for a lot of people, and I agree with Alex. It is quite strange that the government is tripping out on this day, and there's a lot of solar eclipses. But what we do know is that this solar eclipse, if you target it on the map, there's clear signs that this is a sign from God for people to repent of their sins. Things are coming out. The truth is coming out, and everybody can see it. Everybody's getting exposed, and nobody can do anything about it. But again, I'm here to just listen. And if you guys want me to speak about anything, I will. But again, you guys can continue the show. I'm just here to just show my support for Alex, as I feel like I always have, and let the Lord's will be done, not mine. So,
well, Ryan, I really
listening as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate you calling in. Since you're here, we talked about the occult and how they're obsessed with numerology and with astrology and with astrophysics. That's more modern. They brought into that, but it all has its roots in the occult. If you don't mind talking about Bohemian Grove, because I never got the specifics, and I'm not saying you're wrong or weren't witness to something. Can you elaborate on what you said a month ago or 5 weeks ago, where you said that you were tied down and saw something happen at Bohemian Grove?
Yes. Again, I'm going to Congress with this. I'm not playing around. So I've been working closely with, let's just say, people that are at the front lines of this, that understand what I went through and understand what other people have went through. This is it's not, Bohemian Grove is not the only place they do this at. You understand what I'm saying? They do this everywhere. So everybody's like, release it. I can't. I can, but that wouldn't be the smart move. I'm dealing with some evil people here, and I have to be very aware. So,
well, Ryan, let me be clear, Ryan. I'm not disagreeing with you. In fact, from what I got from what you said, I said maybe he was at another Grove, because from what I know, by members of the Grove, and including the former German Chancellor, Helmut Schmidt, he wrote in his book, Men in Power as a Political Retrospective, when he was the West German Chancellor, that he loved the Druidic rituals they did at Groves in Germany, but his favorite place to do them was at Bohemian Grove. And I've gotten their annals, I've snuck in, others have gotten information now. They do mock human sacrifices. Kids and people do get found dead in the area. It is a death cult. So you're saying specifically, you're not ready to bring it out yet, but you're hinting that you were at an offshoot of the Bohemian Grove, or are you saying you were at Bohemian Grove?
I cannot do specifics right now, but again, what happened to me was real, and these people are all gonna get their day. Don't worry. Again, I'm working with like the people that could actually take this down, and there's many other stories as well. Do you believe that they could also erase your memory or attempt to erase your memory? As a question.
Oh, do I believe that there are techniques to erase people's memories?
Yes.
Well, 100%. It's called electroshock therapy.
Okay.
And they with generally just a few quote treatments of it causes brain damage. Done right after events can erase those memories, and lots of it can erase almost all memory, both short term and long term.
Well, I'll tell you, they tried to do it to me. Did not work. God.
Well, it goes on for a few minutes, but you get the drift of his confession. And I've listened to it multiple times already. The call-in with Ryan Garcia. Every time I hear it, I'm more convinced that he is speaking the truth. But again, in case it turns out to be fraudulent, and there's, that's happened more than once in the past. I don't want to be, tagged with being some supporter of, a plant or whatever it is. All right. The history's out there. I mean, even Annie Jacobson, and people, oh, she's a wonderful writer. Yeah, I mean, she was hired to start writing about these subjects that were getting such wide play in the original indie media, which has now been flooded by a bunch of wannabes and pop-up pundits. So she started writing these books about mind control and poisoner in chief and DARPA and all that other stuff, a succession of books, well-documented books that could not have written by one author. These are team projects. All right. Who's behind it? I can't tell. Not that I can't, I know that I can't tell. I don't know. Also, I know that it's another synthetic project like most of these pop-up pundits. Okay. Now, I might run a little bit over. I'm giving you the heads up. One important deficiency, if I can call it that, and it's a mild one because this is back in 1974, right? And this is long before people knew about systemic sex trafficking in the United States alone, international, right? Even the drug trade was kind of a hazy reality to most Americans. Today, it's like an accepted fact of life. We don't know what to do with it as such, but perhaps there's going to be a cosmic event, maybe in a few days, the eclipse, that's going to help us decide. I don't know. But I do think that I agree with Ryan Garcia here. The secrets are being revealed right now, right? And more to come. And there's panic in Needle Park, widespread panic. You can bet your bottom dollar. And I'm not just talking about P. Diddley either. I'm talking about many more people at higher levels as they start heading for the exit, right? You're going to see that. And that might be really the true reason for the eclipse. Not something to be scared about. It's something to welcome is being, because after the total eclipse, what happens? We're back in the sunlight, baby. And sunlight's a disinfectant. So anyway, I have to show you. I was going to give you this whole genealogy of William Domhoff and how I'm related to it intellectually as part of the lineage, right? But I'm going to show you a retrospective. This is already old, 1994, about his work 30 years prior to that, as related by Professor Domhoff himself. Please start reading him. His books have never been out of print. His very first book, Who Rules, or forgot what it's called. He has the, a very brief list here. He's been very productive. Unlike me, I've only written 3 or 4 academic books. He's written several. The Higher Circles, 1970. Fat Cats and Democrats, 1972. Who Rules America, as I mentioned, 1967. C. Wright Mills and the Power Elite. It's an edited book. That was one of his influences, by the way, C. Wright Mills. That's another talk altogether. Sociology, his field, those people of the 50s, the immediate post-war generation that he was influenced by, and I was influenced by extension, they were true seekers of knowledge. That's not true today. The people in the sociology department and psychology, anthropology, social science, humanities, they all bought into the foundation, or bought off by the foundation, DEA, and all the other stuff. So if academia wants to rejuvenate itself, all it has to do is look to the back, or look to the past, right? Any cultural progress is always anticipated by a return to, not a return, but a revisiting of the past that we can rebuild upon. So I'm trying to present solutions here. So most of your grad students, and I get a lot of angry grad students, I can tell in my comments, they're studying some arcane aspect of, gay, lesbian performativity, in Southwest New Jersey, studying at NYU or some bullshit like that. And, they realize they're irrelevant. And I'm trying to say, hey, man, you're going on the wrong road. And join the real source of knowledge. So if you want to start revisiting G. William Domhoff, that is that's a good start, right? Instead of talking about Gramsci and Adorno, right? They call it, cultural Marxism, as if they know anything about it, as if they've read anything about it, right? The pretentiousness of the people in indie media makes me want to barf, right? These are people who are not very bright, but they will say, oh yeah, cultural Marxism is really why America is so screwed up, right? And again, like I say, my story, I know people who are like of that school, because some of them came to the U.S. and taught. Right? In fact, one of the people who influenced Domhoff was Paul Baran. He was a Frankfurt School guy. He taught at Stanford, right? And he was formerly from the Federal Reserve, because people ask, gee, how come you have all these intelligence guys who are leftists and communists and Frankfurt School people? It's because they were always part of the establishment. That's another name you should check out, Paul Baran, Baran, at Stanford. He was there since 1947, I think. He resigned from the Federal Reserve and went to work there. His father was a Menshevik. These are the people that lost out to the Bolsheviks, or the Bolsheviks, right? They came to America, right? Kind of like some of these white Russians that hooked up with Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina Oswald. He was a Menshevik, but he was working for the OSS. He was part of the U.S. bombing survey after World War II, right? Just like the poet who wrote The Age of Anxiety. Well, how did those guys came out of the U.S. bombing survey? And we're going to have an an Age of Anxiety because, man, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki and mass carpet bombing of Germany and the inflicting of mass pain and genocide on the part of the Allies, then that's a real anxious age you are creating. And now there are other means, and I don't need to go into details because I don't want to be stricken again by tube you. But you know what the other tools that are being used now, right? It was all outlined in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars by William Cooper. Check it out. You can find it for free on TubeU. You can read along the script. You can also hear it in audiobook form. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, right? A white paper. Then someone told me who said, "Oh, we don't need to read white papers. All we need to do is listen to Alan Watts. He was an alcoholic Englishman plagiarist who ripped off D.T. Suzuki, who was a straight up Zen thinker. So please don't tell me my Shinola, because I know it. All right. There's a vast gulf between the NBA level and street ball. And I'm on the NBA level, you dig? All right. I hate to talk about this because I'm a yellow person and we don't sell wolf tickets. You know what a wolf ticket is? Look in the Urban Dictionary. It's a verbal aggression. Supposedly, through the oral tradition, comes out of West Africa. It's a characteristic of the African American community. And I'm telling them now that, right, stop selling wolf tickets. Stop making yourself a target by selling wolf tickets. Right, Lou Wasserman, check him out. No, he's not black. He was not Asian. He was Jewish. Lou Wasserman, E.D. Wasserman, he's known as Mr. Democrat. There's at least two critical biographies of Lou Wasserman and E.D. Wasserman. He figured out how the formula, and I remembered it. He said, think Yiddish, but dress British. And I said, oh, okay. That's how you people got over. You stopped wearing the loud gangster, because he was an agent, creative or MCA, Music Corporation of America. He was brought in by Dr. Not Lou Walters. That's Barbara Walters' father. Why am I missing it? I mean, he donated a lot of money, the Eye Institute at UCLA, but he was out of Chicago mob. They controlled all the jazz and all the clubs, all the liquor, all of it, and the movies, entertainment, right? But you see, the yellow people don't have that problem because that's selling wolf tickets is not part of our culture until I brought it in right now, because otherwise I won't be heard and I won't get my respect on the court. You're going to try to treat me and chump me like Jeremy Lin. But, he doesn't know that culture because he's from a Hillsboro or something. He's from where Stanford is. He grew up with a bunch of Taiwanese American engineers who are wealthy working for Silicon Valley. Like he's a generation past me. I'm one of them ghetto yellows who grew up under segregation. I'm yellow and proud. Say it loud. Take that to the bank, Candace Owens. I'm sure you're going to do well. Okay. So when you let me finish up my story with Paul Baran, he was a Menshevik. He was at Stanford. There's this elusive pretend gap between the radicals and the liberals and the conservatives at the higher reaches of power. Yep, you guessed it. David Icke nailed it a long time. They're all the same. They're all the same. But anyway, my professor, my mentor, his name's Peter E. Klikak, came from a Croatian American family who are all leftists. They're all marked. They're from Oakland. They're shipping stevedore type people, rough and tumble, working class people, immigrant stock. And he got a scholarship to Stanford in English, and they were going to remake him into a genteel scholar, a gentleman scholar. And one of his professors was Paul Baran. And Pete Klikak, my professor, my mentor, who, by the way, started out as a Marxist, a leftist, and he became a conservative, an English style, British style conservative, Michael Oakeshott. The real, not the nationalist conservatism that we know in America. but the much more substantive tradition of British liberalism or conservatism that predates, the American version. They're similar, but they're distinct enough to analytically discuss separately. So that was his mentor, and then Pete Klecak was my mentor, and he was. And I was in grad school. I was a grad student, and as a grad student, you're kind of torn between the different factions, and well, you got to join this group. It's you have to join, blood in, blood out to this one here. You got to be a Marxist here. And I had all those professors. I had all of them. And you had to pick a side. It's like being in prison, there's no neutrality, right? But he told me, he said, he warned me. He says, I know, he didn't have to spell it out to me, but he knew that he was on the outs because he was a former Marxist who had become a conservative, right? Which is the ultimate betrayal. And that always mystified me because all the rest of my friends were leftists until I grew up, matured, read, and started reading world history. And the real turning point, and this is the takeaway point today, the real turning point, this is my contribution, Professor Hamamoto's contribution. The real turning point is when I started listening and taking seriously a lot of right-wing thinkers and writers, or at least they were presented as being right-wing thinkers and writers. And I've given talks of them already, right? Ezra Pound being one of them. And I would call him a lieutenant, but he in his own right is a thinker, Eustace Mullins. So read them. That has a lot of views because they're still within recent memory. I also interviewed, well, a lot of people who I respect who are still around. I go out of my way to give them their propers, right? Including G. William Domhoff, because we'll all benefit by going back to these original thinkers and not listen to Candace fucking Owens for some sort of wisdom. It's not going to come out of her mouth. It's not going to come out of Ben Shapiro's mouth. Stop listening to the noise. Shut it off. It's not going to come out of that pothead Joe Rogan's mouth. No, it's not. He's entertaining. Do you understand? And that's not what I do. Don't lump me in with whoever Miles Mathis is. I mean, everything's a conspiracy. Everything's fake. Everybody died and swapped. I mean, come on, man. I'm sorry. I'm sounding like Joe Biden. Come on, man. Oh, man, I'm glitching out. So anyway, that's for the new my regular viewers know what I'm about. But for the new subscribers, do not make that fundamental error of lumping me in with that group. All right. Okay. What else did I want to conclude with? I'll leave with you, and his material is quite difficult. I'll have to admit, but he's Italiano, and most of you don't know his name because your left-wing professors studiously avoided mentioning his name because he was anti-Marxist, anti-socialist, right? But there are plenty of sociologists, anthropologists, writers, literary critics who are non-Marxists, and they have been shut out of today's academia, right? My generation were trained to engulf and encompass contemporary academia with our left-wing OSS type propaganda, right? That won over China. They helped lay the seeds for the most extensive civilizational revolution in modern times, the Chinese Revolution. That was supposed to be my fate. I was groomed for that. And I'll talk more about, you don't want to know about my personal life, and I don't really like talking about it, but I'm part of the story, and I only tell you because it's instructive to show you how the process works, how elite recruitment works. That's one of the concepts of Vilfredo Pareto. He was inspired. He says himself, Pareto was one of his. He didn't know him. He died in 1924, the interwar period. Right when fascism was taking over. This is Pareto. He came up with the notion of a circulation of elites. That's his phrase, right? There's a reason why you should understand these people instead of just saying, well, yeah, Elaine Chao was the head of United Way, and then she was the Secretary of Transportation, and then she just moved on to different positions, right? Just like these Wall Street guys who become Secretary of Treasury and then they go back. Well, there's a term for it. It's called circulation of elites. Just say circulation of elites, and we get it. We understand it. It's a shorthand, but it's a conceptual, efficient way of, it's Occam's razor, explains the most with the little. It's the circulation of elites. That's how all societies work, Junior. That's how it works. And burning down the city of Portland or rioting in the streets after Donald Trump gets reelected president, that's not going to change the damn thing. Not in the utopian wet dream that you think it will. Of course, we know you're all paid agents anyway by the Bolsheviks and the techno-Marxists who have taken over these institutions. It's integrated. There's a concept that comes out of sociology. It's called state capture. State capture, right? And I'm telling you this because academia is not beyond salvation. People, oh, don't go to college. No, that's the best single stop place to network, to become an elite in your person. Elite doesn't mean better, but someone who's going to excel in your realm of activity, whether it's basketball or physics or literature. Or studio art. That's where all the people come together. All right, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of there are a lot of people saying, well, we're just going to walk away from the university. The problem's not going to go away. It's going to get worse because they want you to leave. They want you to take your game off the field. Who's they? The power elite, the circulation of elites, elite theory. C. Wright Mills, he wrote a book called The Power Elite. These are not new ideas, and they're ostensibly from people who are left liberal. And you notice they sound very good to people who are of the conservative political persuasion, because at a certain point, they are in complete agreement with each other. We're Americans. Coming off as being better than one person, being better than another, that's anathema to our ethos. We don't like that, right? And our system has enough wiggle room where someone with ambition, merit, and a modicum of talent can get the job done. Sometimes in history, better than others. And now we have fake people who have done nothing, who are scolding and guilt tripping us for being of the wrong ethnicity. And I'm a yellow man. And they say, well, the reason why you're conservative is because you're white adjacent. And that's their term. You gotta admire their linguistic creativity, right? The reason why the yellow people are just busy doing our work and paying most of the taxes to subsidize illegal immigration and the welfare system, right? Yellow professionals, the ones, your doctors, your pharmacists, the ones you see quietly going about their job. We've about had it. I'm not their spokesperson, and I'm not saying that I'm representative of thoughts. But that the party's over so far as the yellow people are concerned, because like I said, I grew up in segregation, right? And you don't have the moral high ground on Professor Hamamoto. All right. But as I conclude, I will give you a preview of coming attractions We're going to talk more about elite theory, and we're going to talk about the yellow world too, right? It's the world is just not about the crisis in Ukraine and Russia, in Europe, Western Europe. It's about the yellow world. Yeah. I mean, I gave a talk on Joe Low, the Malaysian yellow Mac Daddy. He even got Paris Hilton working for him. He paid us some big bucks. He even got Leonardo DiCaprio to come to his parties on the giant yachts. All right. And that's just kind of a dramatic illustration, a distorted one, admittedly, about how the wealth has changed. But the mindset of the average American has not changed with it. Do you understand? That's why my yellow perspective is so practical and so needed in 2024. And that's why I dedicated my entire professional career to having people understand it. Not because of vanity, but because of national survival. We're going to turn that ship around, the ship of state. And we're going to sail into the horizon of promise and greater opportunity, right? But we got to know that people like Mao Zedong are synthetic leaders, right? This is another talk because I'm running a little bit over time. This book, you can't read it because of the reflection. It's titled The Yale-China Association, A Centennial History, published by the Yale-China Association. They've been at it for over 100 years. You wonder why they're in power? Yale people, the white shoe boys, the skull and bones. Why they're in the power elite? This is where Domhoff doesn't quite get it because he's not into New World Order theory. Professor Hamamoto introduced New World Order theory into the academic setting in the Anglo-American world. He's the one, that's me. With special emphasis on the way yellow people are positioned within that New World Order system. That's me. It's not P. Diddley. It's not a brown person either. It's not an Arab person. It's a yellow person. It's a yellow people. And I'm not saying that out of ethnic pride. I'm just presenting to you a sociological fact, Jack. So here it is in black, because people say, oh, you're not documenting your assertions. You're just pulling it out of your ass. Well, kiss my yellow ass. That's what I say to you. Here's a picture here, page 26 of a young and handsome Mao Zedong. And it talks all about his being recruited by the Yale-China Association. And they groomed him, man. They groomed him. And 80 million people, co-ethnics, right? Of fellow Han people. That's the majority racial ethnic group, Han. 80 million estimated. The estimates vary. Perished under his quote unquote cultural revolution and all these different 5-year plans. It's it's Maoism, it's Stalinism. Stalin, the kulaks, that story, but study the Chinese Revolution as well. And it was not a homegrown revolution. It was exported into the country to destabilize it for eventual consolidation by 2024. They're behind schedule. Who put them behind schedule? We did. You and me did. Because we started thinking. We started figuring it out. We started putting, at least I did. I mean, I abandoned my whole Marxist indoctrination from my leftist professors. Thanks to Professor Peter Klikak, who was a red diaper baby. He was born in a communist household. That's why they call him red diaper. He was a baby. And became a thinking person and became a traditional British liberal or a conservative to preserve the values that most of us cherish: family, cultural institutions, church, the whole list of good stuff that's in the process of being dismantled now under the pretext of diversity, equity. You know the story. I don't have to report it to you. But the good news, ladies and gentlemen, it's Easter Sunday. And the good news, it's turning around. It's turning around. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's all for one day. Before long, I'm going to invite my friend and colleague Lena Poo back on because she's a yellow woman who has this history, living history of her family being run out by Mao Zedong. Okay. And we need to know about that. That's a lot of people, 80 million people, right? And I forgot to mention, this is the most important fact of all, because you say, well, that's history, that's gone. And besides, it was probably only 50 million. You're going to quibble over the details. You're a nitpicker, right? But its relevance today too is, guess what? I see the same pattern of central top-down planning that's aimed against U.S. agriculture that Mao Zedong was doing in the Great Leap Forward and all these other centrally planned and implemented programs implemented by a bunch of young student types, grad students types, right? The ones who put comments in my section here telling me that I, need to document this, that, or the other, or how can I justify saying this or that assertion? Because I study history, and you better study history as well. Because maybe you're going to accept starvation, but I'm not. And most Americans will not either, because we have a huge civilizational advantage in that almost 100% Americans have never lived through feudalism, brutal feudalistic rule by either local landlords, regional warlords, or ancient forms of oppression that most other people in the world have done that. That's really what is exceptional about America. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it means that it's anathema to us. And we can't even envision ourselves, maybe that's part of our weakness, living in semi-feudal or neo-feudalistic situations. But it can easily happen. And it happens by starting to control the basic avenues of the basic mechanisms of the political economic system. Food production being the fundamental one, the primary one. All right. So mull it over. Thank you very much for your patience. I went 17 minutes past time, but it was kind of like a reintroduction of myself and my mission, my purpose in doing this channel. God willing, I'll be back with you next Sunday. Have a glorious Easter. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.